on the with us today, we have amazing Hannah Pace from Edwards Life Sciences, who's going to bring a little bit more of a talent perspective. We've got Raj Kazbekar from Helen of Troy, who obviously is covering across regulatory quality and clinical. We've got Kinga from market leading BD, who's got her experience in post-market quality, and Michael Campbell, who's joining us from Alive DX and is bringing a bit more of an IVD perspective. So just some housekeeping before we get started. So we are running live, guys, on both Zoom. So welcome to everybody who's joined us in Zoom. We really hope you're going to enjoy the session. And to all 200 plus of you that are listening to us on LinkedIn Live, we're also super excited to have you here. And we are bringing everybody together through Slido, which I'm going to show you in a second how that's going to work. But that is going to be our central point of truth as to where we are going to ask questions, interact with each other, and interact with our esteemed panel of guests today. So get ready to scan that code when I go on to the next page and explain a little bit more about how Slido works. The first thing is that with Slido, you can ask questions. So if you have a burning question or they've said something and you want more clarity, write it down and post it in the Slido. You can do it as yourself, or you can even do it anonymously. So there's no excuses to not ask questions. But if you're in there and you don't actually have a question to ask and you're just reading through the questions and something looks interesting for you, you also have the possibility to upvote the existing questions. When we address the Q&A section, I will be starting with the most popular questions. So if you want a question answered, if it looks like a really interesting question that you want to hear from our thought leaders on, make sure you upvote it and bring it to the top of the list. If you have any tech issues, Zoom chat is available for support. If you're listening to us on LinkedIn Live, unfortunately, we don't have tech support for LinkedIn Live, but hopefully it's all running well. Is this recorded? Yes, it is recorded and it will be available on Elemed's website. And as I've said to you, this is now the 5th session that we're doing. So that means there are 4 other sessions of amazing content with amazing leaders. You will have the chance to go and listen to those on demand on Elemed's website. We will share all the links after the session so you can go and listen to it on demand. But the value, guys, the value of being on this session live is that you're going to have the chance to ask your questions to our members and our panel. So stay live with us, because this is the only place where you're going to get free mentoring from some amazing leaders in the space. And finally, we will be going for 90 minutes. It's going to be an intense session, but we will not overrun. So let's get started. Please scan this code, guys. So bring your phone up to the screen, scan this code, and hopefully it should open up to the Slido that we're going to use as the place to interact. And any moment now, you're going to see popping up on your screen a poll that will ask you, where are you joining from? So if you keep looking at your Slido, you should hopefully see that poll launching any minute now. And when it launches, please let us know, where are you dialing in from? Where in the world? Because Elemed has a huge network of people all over the world, and we're really curious to know where you're dialing in from. So just enter the space and press enter, and then we're going to start to see it popping up on the screen. So I can see we've got, okay, a lot of Europe to start with. Surprise, surprise. We've got people dialing in from Switzerland, UK. We've got Paris. Hello, Austria. I feel like I'm on the Eurovision, guys. Berlin. We've got Germany. Wow. So we really do have people from all over the world. Keep interacting with us and letting us know. But this is the central place to interact. So for those of you that are joining us just now and a few minutes late, welcome. We're just in the intro, so we haven't fully got started into the meaty bit of the session yet. So you haven't missed much. But I'm just going to skip back on my screen. Scan this QR code. This is the central place where we are going to be interacting with our panelists and asking questions. This is your place to ask questions and to upvote the existing questions that you will see in Slido. So what you'll see on the app is to the left-hand side, you'll see Q&A. You'll see there are already some questions. You can't see my phone, but there are already some questions in there, guys. So upvote the ones that are most interesting for you, and we will make sure we address them in the second half of the session. So Let's get started. I think we've had enough Elena monologue for the session. So I think it's time now that we introduce our amazing panelists. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we're going to bring up our panelists onto the screen for them to introduce themselves. Let's start first with Hannah. Welcome, Hannah. And I'm going to just make sure that Hannah is unmuted so that she can introduce herself. That would be a good start. Let's go to Raj actually, and then we're going to come back and make sure that Hannah's mic is unmuted.
Hello. Hi, my name is Raj Kaspekar. I'm the Global VP for Regulatory, Product Quality, and Clinical Affairs here at Helen of Troy. Helen of Troy is a $2 billion consumer product company with about 1 billion, close to 1 billion in medical device consumer products. I have 20 people in my group, and this group covers pre-market quality management systems, post-market, as well as clinicals. We also do a lot of publishing, paper publishing in reputable journals. We service the health and wellness portfolio here at Helen of Troy, and I'm located in Boston, Massachusetts. And my team is located in Marlborough here in Boston, as well as in Lausanne, Switzerland, Hong Kong, and in Argentina.
Thanks so much, Raj. So really, that's a global remit and a very broad scope. So we're really going to be interested to hearing a little bit more about how you facilitate innovation in a global way across your team. And let's move on to Hannah. So Hannah, is your microphone working? The big question.
I hope so, Eleanor. Can you hear me? Yeah, good. Glad to get that out the way at the beginning. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Hannah Pace. I'm a Senior Director in the HR organization with Edwards Life Sciences. For any of you that don't know Edwards, we are a global leader in medical innovations for patients suffering from structural heart disease. I'm based in Switzerland. So I've learned that I don't want to reveal anything about my colleagues, but there's a few of us on the panel today from Switzerland. I work in our European headquarters in Nyon, and our European headquarters cover a big expansion of Europe. So we're also covering the Middle East, Canada, Latin America. I have a role that requires me to wear a few hats in the organization, and I'm privileged enough to sit on 3 leadership teams in the region. One is my natural home, that's the HR leadership team for our region. And we've got about 150 talents working in HR across what we call the EMEACLA region at Edwards. I'm also part of the regulatory affairs leadership team in the region. And for here, we've got a group of almost 50 talents working across more than 20 countries. So a big, big geographical scope for us with a big impact for patients as well. And my third role is to sit on the leadership team of our TAVR business. That's the transcatheter aortic valve replacement business for Edwards, which is a big part of our organization here in the region. And there's over 300 talents in that organization. Now, I might be also an outlier on the panel because I'm what we call a self-leader in our organization. So part of the leadership team, but operating as an individual contributor, making things happen across a matrix organization. So I'll be happy to bring that perspective to some of the discussion as well today.
Thank you so much, Hannah. And I think it's going to be really interesting to learn a little bit about, you have this helicopter view and you're seeing different functions and how they also do it. And so, what you have seen go well, not so well. So I think you're going to be able to bring some really interesting insights as well to the discussion. So thanks for joining us. Let's go over to Kinga.
Hi, good day, everyone. So my name is Kinga Stolinska, and I'm a director for post-market quality in the EMEA region, which covers, Europe, Middle East, and Africa at Becton Dickinson. So as already introduced, I'm based out of Switzerland, and I lead the quality processes like complaint handling, adverse event reporting, field actions, and also customer quality. So my organization consists of approximately 50 associates located all over Europe. And I also manage quality outsourced processes to our third-party partner, which with around 30 plus associates there. So happy to join here this panel to share some of my perspectives on the innovation.
Thank you so much, Kinga. And let's go last but not least to Michael.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Campbell. I'm the Chief Regulatory Affairs and Quality Officer at Elemed DX, also based in Switzerland, just down the street from some of the colleagues here. My role is to actually supporting the entire global management system for quality management between our office in Switzerland as well as the office in Scotland. It's a total of roughly 65 individuals for both organizations. Main focuses are global registrations of our products as well as the entire quality management system for our automated multiplex technology, the Mosaic system, as well as for our blood banking reagents that are produced in the Scottish office.
Thank you so much, Michael. So again, a really broad and global focused position. So I'm super excited, guys, to jump into the conversation. Before we do that, just for the people that have joined in the last few minutes, I'm going to just share this QR code. So guys, scan this QR code, bring it up on your screen, because in the second half of the session, we are going to be going live and asking your questions directly to this amazing panel. This is your chance to ask them your questions and they will be answering them. So where else would you be able to reach out to vice presidents and senior directors of multinational organizations to ask for their advice on your questions regarding leadership and driving innovation? So this is a fantastic opportunity for any upcoming leader. So make sure you've scanned this QR code. If you don't have a question to ask and you just want to listen in, that's fine. Have a look at the questions that are already there and upvote the ones that you really like the look of, so we can make sure that we're asking the questions that are most relevant and interesting for you. Okay, so let's jump straight in and start with my first question, which I'm going to throw to Hannah, which is like, what does it actually mean to have a team that innovates?
Thanks, Eleanor, and thanks for the opportunity to kick some of the discussion off. I really love this question because, you know, innovation is so critical in our industry for what we're doing here in MedTech, and it's just integral to what we do, but it's also somehow a confrontational question, right? In its simplicity, it forces you to kind of go back to basics. So I went back to the dictionary definition, right? What does innovation mean? What does it mean to innovate? And it's about making changes and doing something in a new way. And I think for me, when we look about how that comes to life in an organization, it's really important that we consider the why of that and why that is so important and how that brings us together in the industry. So when we're looking at innovation in MedTech, we're talking about making an impact to patient lives, we're transforming patient care, and we're influencing how medicine is practiced. Right, and you'll hear me probably coming back to some of those reflections later on in the discussion as well. And it's just such an honor and a privilege to have that opportunity to work in an organization that has the capacity to influence that. And it can be easy. You know, I talked about my role here in the regional headquarters. We're a US company, so our global headquarters are in California. And it can be easy to consider that innovation only comes to life in kind of the organic places in the organization where we're intentional about that. So thinking about R&D teams, I'm thinking about a couple of thousands of engineers that we have at Edwards who work technically on innovation. And so it's important that we embrace the mindset across the organization. And even when we're in a region, even when we're looking at commercial distribution, making sure that we understand what that means and how we can bring that to life. And when I work with our regulatory affairs teams, that's even more critical because they're the parts of the organization that are securing our capacity to bring new product innovation into the region, right? And so without those teams, we are not able to bring innovation to life in the organization. And there can be lots of ways we see that coming to life, right, in terms of what does it mean to have teams that innovate. And the things that we typically see is that the leaders who bring innovation through their teams have the capacity to have the teams generate the new ideas, constantly thinking about what they can do better, what they can do differently. They're able to translate those ideas into practice, bring concrete results, bring tangible impact, both inside and outside of the groups that they work with. They can challenge others to bring breakthrough solutions. So again, thinking about my own role, I can't bring innovation to life through a direct team because I operate as a self-leader, but I can certainly challenge my colleagues and work with them to bring that to life. And finally, the teams that do this tend to have a portfolio of innovation, right, in whatever framework or field they're working in, whether it's a finance group, whether it's a marketing group, whether it's a quality group. What you see is that these teams stand out because they have not just one option or one thing that they bring to innovate, but they tend to have a portfolio of things that they can bring to the organization.
I really like that answer because actually, you know, as you said, like in the traditional sense of the word, we could think about innovation, we could think about bringing new technologies to market, and then we're thinking about R&D often, but actually it's more of a mindset, to your point, and it's actually something that can be encouraged by leaders. It doesn't matter what function you're in or where you're sitting within an organization globally. Actually, it's you know, a way of life, if you like, a way of leading. And so I'm really interested to ask to our other three panelists, Raj, King, and Michael, like, what actually are you doing within your teams to foster a mindset of innovation? I'm going to start with Michael.
I would follow on to the comments that you and Hannah made. It's not just bringing the new products that change the medical care, but it's finding innovative ways to bring those products. I mean, yes, I'm focused on the quality system, the regulatory affairs, but if I can't bring it, like as you said, Hannah, it doesn't help innovate the patient treatment, the medical care, if I don't find a way to get it to the market in an innovative fashion in the time it needs to be there. But what I do in my team to foster the innovation is I don't tell them the answers. I give them the background, I give them the basics, I show them how to find the tools to get the answers, and I ask them to bring options. I ask them to bring more than one answer, but I don't tell them what the answer is to start with. They have to figure it out themselves. And then they bring the options and we discuss and identify what the better option is for the project we need to work on.
That's a really interesting, that's really interesting as well, because by not giving the answers, oftentimes your team come up with better ideas than you. Not you personally, Michael, I'm sure you come up with great ideas.
No, I agree. They come up with better answers than I do, and it also keeps me fit and it keeps me up to date on the newest.
Yeah, I really love that answer. Kinga, what about you? What do you do?
So when it comes, I fully agree with what you mentioned, that also it's not only bringing the products into the market. What I would also add to it, like in my role in particular, we look into how we can do things better, how we can do things, you know, smarter or quicker, right? So I also look into the innovations of how we work and how we execute our daily operations, right? So, you know, when it comes to the actual how foster, you know, this innovation in the team is really encouraging them to collaborate, right? Collaborate with cross-functional teams to exchange ideas and perspectives. I'm sure, you know, we can use experience of other teams that are coming across similar challenge or similar a process that we can actually collaborate and come up with a good idea together. So not only that, I would say internal in the company, but also getting some perspective outside. So joining different conferences, trade shows, or looking at the content on social media are very rich into different resources that could be helpful to be inspired. But I would also like to mention that it's very important that you lead by example. As a leader, you really need to have this commitment to innovation. Be open for your teams to come up with those ideas. You, Michael, mentioned that this is super important to show them that you are open for it and that you are also willing to take the risk and support the team through entire journey.
I love the focus on team as well, and the focus on internal and external to help foster that innovative culture. So thank you for that, Kinga. And Raj, what about you?
So I'm the only person in this group that comes from the consumer product side. And for us, innovation is just not a mindset. It's basically survival. You know, it's the difference between whether you will succeed or not as a company, because in the consumer space, things move so rapidly that we have to change and we have to figure out new ways of doing things. So we actually have groups of people that focus purely on innovation. And we don't look at innovation just from a product perspective. We look at innovation from a product perspective, from a process perspective, from a tools perspective, from a culture, social innovation perspective, as well as from a commercial innovation perspective. And we have initiatives going on in each of these categories. Product by far is one of the most important because it directly affects the consumers, but also process is very important. With using some of the new tools like predictive analytics and regulatory information management systems, these are kind of critical, in order to make sure that we are efficient. In terms of culture, social innovation, we want to make sure that Helen of Troy is a great place to work. And therefore, we look at new ways of ensuring that people are happy with working here. So it's like an all-encompassing system. And one of the key things that we do is follow a three-pronged system, which is number one, support and encouragement. Number two is a reward system where people are recognized for any kind of innovative ideas or implementation that is done. And then third is measurement. How do you measure the impact of innovation in terms of not only a product success, but also process or commercial innovation success? So those are some of the things that we do here at Helen of Troy.
That's really interesting as well, because, companies can say, hey, we have an innovative culture, but actually, do you reward against it? Do you celebrate that innovation when we see good examples of it? And are you creating that safe space for it to happen? So thank you, everybody, for sharing your perspectives on how you foster innovation within your teams. I'm really interested, though, to actually see what tangible successes have come of it in your experience, because it's great to talk about it conceptually, but actually, is it actually leading to some positive results for you? So, Michael, what about from your side? Have you seen anything specific that you can talk to?
Oh, absolutely. With the whole IVDR, we had to be innovative to manage all the IVDR activities. But specifically for us in Switzerland, our projects were to bring to market one of our products for the autoimmune testing. It's a multiplex testing system that's disruptive technology. Of course, we want to be innovative, get it on the market soon. It's measuring 10 or more autoimmune disease markers, all with one sample test. You get all 10 results at one time. Okay, standard process, no innovation. I submit a technical file, I get a notified body review. They review all 10 markers together in the technical file. They say, yes, you can CE mark it. The innovation behind that is, okay, let's submit one technical file for one marker, get that through. It's faster to review the technical performance of one marker. And once you've got that one autoimmune marker, you're CE marked basically for all of the autoimmune testing. So every product after that, while you're having the individual product review, you're finishing the development of the remaining 9 markers. You've got a 10 marker panel that's automatically CE marked as soon as you finish all of your internal design development work. That's using the regulatory structure, the framework, the laws, but not doing it in the standard way of, I'm going to submit the technical file for my 10 products. I'm only going to submit one product, get cleared for autoimmune testing, and then every other testing after that is automatic CE marked without additional notified body review before I can go to the market. So that was a huge success for the company, that we brought our product to the market 6 to 9 months faster.
So that actually led, and obviously with all the stuff, going on with IVDR, well, until the recent announcement, speed was really important.
Exactly.
Thank you. And Kinga, what about you?
So, when you ask me about, the success, what I can think of, I will bring a different perspective, okay, here. So for me, the success that I can measure is actually the cultural change and the mindset shift. That basically means that my team, thanks to this, mindset change, they are inspired to look into their processes, critically, look at the processes from outside and be curious to change the current status quo, and actually come up with different solutions, how we can improve the situation with this continuous improvement mindset in place. So, this proactivity in doing their own research and reaching out to different departments to search for different technologies that they can implement in their space, to added value. And I mentioned that because I believe that if you have that kind of mindset, you are already set for success to deliver whatever you can think of, right?
Thank you. And I think it's really interesting to talk about the positives, but on the other hand, there are, let's say, probably some barriers or obstacles to creating that or fostering innovation. And we can't only talk about the positives. So I'm interested to know, you know, like what are some of the challenges that you face when it comes to actually trying to push for this innovation, and then also, like, what do you do to overcome those types of challenges? Hannah, I'm interested in your perspective, considering that you have this helicopter view across the whole business.
Well, I mean, I think the most kind of cliched but probably true one, Eleanor, is that you're always going to face the possibility that there'll be some resistance to change, right? As for everyone you have leaning into the opportunity to do stuff differently, you've got some dynamics happening that mean that people are more or less, you know, feeling energized to do that at different times. And I think it's important to remember that that's normal. That's probably a normal reaction. And I would echo what I was saying, you know, at the beginning of the discussion. It's really important, especially in our industry, to remind people of why, right? If we're innovating, we're doing that to improve patient lives. And I think that's something that can cut through some of those emotions to make sure everybody stays focused. I think what I thought could be useful to share with the group was to say, you know, we have quite a lot of data available to us, and we measure what the teams tell us about innovation. So we're able to identify which of the groups which tell us through some of our engagement surveys that they really resonate with the innovation culture in the team. And that helps us understand what the profile of those teams are. So the first thing I can tell you is that those teams are always really, really highly engaged, right? So that comes a little bit back to if people are resistant to change, then, you know, they might not be leaning into the innovation. But when they are, the teams are highly engaged. And the other thing that we see is that they also score really positively in terms of diversity. Right, so they're teams that tell us that they believe in the diversity culture. They believe that that makes them a better team, and that's diversity on lots of different elements. It can be diversity of experience, it can be diversity of location, it can be diversity of education, it can be diversity of generations. But really bringing all those diverse perspectives into a team can also really help unlock some of that, you know, resistance or some of that challenge to really make the innovation culture part of who you are as a team. Now, it can be hard to bring that into the team if you don't have it already, and you perhaps don't have the organizational dynamics to make that happen by making some of the talent choices that you might like to do. So I think it's also important to remember people only know what they know, right? And as a leader, part of your role can be to open people's eyes to different perspectives and different realities, and help them understand there's always an opportunity to learn from somebody working on something differently with a different point of view to you. So I would say, look for the opportunities to do that, and they can be relatively simple. In some of my former experience, I've always partnered with sales teams, Eleanor. I love partnering with the commercial organization, but, you know, we did stuff like bringing our research and development teams closer to the commercial teams, bringing the commercial teams closer to them, having them visit each other in their place of work, understand where they've come from. And what you see is, even if the teams are polar opposites in terms of the profiles, the background, where they operate, how they contribute, they still find common ground, they still find a passion for the company they work for, and they still manage to inspire each other to come up with new ways of thinking, new ways of looking at things. And quite often you unlock some relationships that you know, stay around. So that's what I would say. If you don't have the organizational dynamics to bring some of the things that we know work, look for the opportunities which might be closer to home than you think, to bring teams together and bring the diversity in a different way.
Thank you, Hannah. I'm going to also pass this to Raj, because I'm interested, obviously, with your consumer background and focus. What are some of the obstacles that you've experienced when it comes to trying to, I mean, you said it's a matter of survival innovation, but yeah, you know, what are some of the challenges that you've seen in the past, and what have you done to overcome that?
So the single most biggest challenge I've seen is getting buy-in, and buy-in not only from people within your group, but also from the executive team. And I mean, there are some other challenges as well, like, for example, not having the right people, like who I call mavericks within your team, who can challenge the status quo. You could also have resource constraints. You could have issues where the idea gets killed because of more urgent issues. So these are some of the challenges, but I would say the most important one is getting that buy-in. And the way to work around it that we have found to be very successful is basically preparation, 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 right? So the more knowledge and the more risk retirement you do on any new idea that has not been proven, the more likelihood of it getting a buy-in. And let me give you an example, right? So we work in product quality, and one of the key metrics that we use is what is called as the return rate on our products. And for many, many years, we used to just do a guessing game in terms of how do you estimate a return rate for the next year or the next 5 years, so that we can plan our business in terms of what the bottom line is going to be. And finally, we came to a realization that we have to do some innovation. And there was a group within the quality organization here that actually started building a predictive model and used machine learning and did back testing, and basically showed that you could use this predictive model with a very high accuracy rate to do a prediction. So by the time they were in a position to talk to the executive team, they already had the data, they had the results, they were able to show that their method was a lot superior to what was being done, and it was a slam dunk. The executive team had to basically buy in and fund the project. So that's the reason the preparation and the amount of time you spend in terms of developing the idea is key before you try and get buy-in.
So it's one thing getting buy-in from the leadership team and from upper management, but there's also buy-in that you need to get amongst your own team, right? And if we talk specifically about the regulatory, quality and clinical workforce, majorly stereotyping right now, I'm going to say that they're not the most. So let's say, like, sometimes they're not the people that are going to jump out at risk, right? Especially when outcomes are uncertain. We're talking about people that really evaluate risk and think things through in detail before. I mean, I see it all the time with their careers. So how do you facilitate a culture of innovation and encourage people to take those risks, especially when the outcomes aren't guaranteed, and they might not feel fully confident doing so? Michael, you were laughing, so I'm going to throw that to you.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely correct. We're risk averse in regulatory. We've committed to delivering a CE mark or a product release on a launch timeline that commercial needs to start off with, and we want to make certain that it's going to deliver on that time. So yeah, of course, we don't try that, but the main thing is it has to be the culture of the company. The company has to want the innovation. We have one of our company values is intrapreneurship. Yeah. So we want our company, we want our entire company to have that as a value in our culture. And then the leaders have to do the example, just like Kinga said. We have to give the example. We have to think up innovative solutions. We have to offer those solutions, and we have to challenge them to find the innovative. And they also have to understand, also to foster that case, they also have to understand that if it fails, I'm the one that's responsible for the failure. The company succeeds, I'm the one that was responsible for the failure, not the person that was driving the activity. So you have to also stand behind them and support them through the process and be ready to say, hey, I guided this innovation. This one didn't work the way we wanted it to. It's on me. It's not on the employees that were doing it. It's not on the individual persons. The company wants the culture of innovation. We drive it. We know there's a risk built into it, and we accept that some of them are not going to come out the way we want.
I think that's really important as a leader as well, to back your people, especially if you're trying to encourage that kind of innovation.
Exactly.
Kinga, from your side, is there anything additional any other additional tips?
Yeah, I would agree that, you know, we in quality and regulatory, we are a little bit risk reverse, right? And although I think that if we will not change that mindset, we will be as a blockers, you know, for the business to grow, right? So if we really want to be enabler, we need to go with the flow, right? So you know, in order to mitigate some uncertainty, I think what we could do, we could still you know, go and take some risks, but do it a little bit and try to do it in a safer environment. Just an example, you can pilot some initiatives that you are coming up with, right, to do it in a smaller scale before you go global or before you implement your solution everywhere. Maybe go through an audit, right, as we are usually audited very regularly, just to try it, if this works, if you can have an argumentation to defend that in front of the regulators, right? So I think that could basically help. But also what, for example, I can mention from my perspective is that I'm willing to take the risk if I do have some kind of a framework that I can operate in. And that's what I sometimes try with my team, to establish together the milestones and some, you know, success criteria, checking points where we can, you know, discuss together and build trust. Because, you know, giving the project and then making sure that it can bring the expected results, you need to build the trust with your stakeholders, right? So I think those checking points and success criteria to go full scale, it's would be also very useful in this situation.
Thank you so much for giving your input on that. And I'm just going to take a quick second to share my screen and to bring up the QR code for Slido, because in approximately just over 5 minutes or so, we're going to go into a live Q&A session. And when we say live Q&A, I'm going to be looking at Slido and we're going to be reading out questions that our audience have put into the Slido. So if you're an audience member and you're listening in and you would love to put a question to our amazing panel of speakers talking about driving innovation, please scan this QR code, add your question, and we will try our best to answer as many of them as possible when we go to the Q&A section. If you don't have a question to ask, it's okay. Still scan that QR code and have a look at the questions that are already in there. The ones that you really like the look of, give it a thumbs up so it goes right to the top of the page. And that way we will be addressing the most popular questions first. So before we go into that, I still have a few more questions that I want to put to the panelists. And one that I have is, so we've been speaking a lot about creating that culture, making people feel safe, getting buy-in from management. And so I'm just thinking, how do you actually distinguish between what is a good idea and what is not? So what idea you are going to back, for example, and say, right, I'm putting my name behind this, or actually maybe this is not one that we might want to proceed with. Hannah, have you got any insights for us?
Sure. I mean, you know, some of the old adages still help, right? It is important to prioritize focus and to pick your battles, right? If you're striving for innovation, then you might be coming up against some confrontation. You might, you know, have to convince people. And so it's important to be really clear with the organization about what your long-term goal is. Be super intentional, avoid any perception of being opportunistic, right? Sometimes you come across a great idea, you want to run after it, but you know, you're not entirely sure where it's going to end up long term. That's okay to explore, but probably work out at which point you want to go big on some of your messaging around that. You've got to evaluate what that sponsorship and organizational buy-in is, right? Some ideas are great, but they're just not great for right now. There's a bit more of a journey to go on. Some, it is the right time and you have to advocate and get people behind you. Always keep that bigger why in mind, right? Again, the question that will always help us in our organization define, is this the right risk to take? Will it have a positive impact on patients? And that tends to really focus you, ground you in the second, even if you don't exactly know where you're going to get to at the end. That's also part of the journey. Keep your ego in check as well. I think that's important. If people are telling you, you know, this is not a good idea, people you trust are telling you, and even if you're super convinced, listen to it, make sure that you can navigate through that. And one practical exercise we've found really useful, and this was an idea that came to us out of an inclusive leadership workshop, is bring a group of people together. Don't just focus on a post-mortem. We called it a pre-mortem. Think about all the ideas that can go wrong, work out what you can de-risk in that, and use that to help you you know, weigh up the pros and the cons and see if it's something that you want to fight for and take to the end. But those are some of the things, Elena, that I work through and that I help teams work through, or that I've gone through with my own team in the past.
So we've spoken a little bit about how to foster that culture, how to get buy-in from management. We've spoken about how to prioritize what you innovate on. We've seen some really good examples of like times where innovation has worked well. Obviously, I'm going to ask a question now to the panel about, okay, well, I'd like to know, has it ever completely failed? And I'm going to ask you to be human in this, guys, and not tell me that every innovation you've ever worked on has been 100% perfect, but actually share with me a little bit your failures, because I think that's also really important to share with the audience, that it can happen to people who are really distinguished in their careers, that things don't always go to plan. So Raj, have you got an example for me of a time where you tried an innovation, it didn't work?
I could probably talk to you about that for 2 days.
Okay.
We have plenty of failures, and if we didn't have failures, we wouldn't succeed. So failures are part and parcel. They are like, you know, cost of doing business, basically. One key failure that I can share with you is several years ago, our company decided to get into this self-fitting hearing aid business. And, you know, on occasion, we have what are called as Shark Tanks, where we discuss various ideas, and this idea came to one of those Shark Tanks, and we said we can probably develop a self-fitting hearing aid. And at that time, the regulation, both here in the US as well as internationally, was leaning towards developing a self-fitting hearing aid. And my team, the regulatory team, spent so much time and effort in terms of getting this product through the FDA and you know, getting it through various other regulatory bodies around the world. But eventually, the business team came to a conclusion that the amount of spending that would have to be done in advertising and other business spending would be so huge, and there were also so many players. The business conditions had changed significantly, and there were so many players that entered the market once the regulation here in the US went live, that it did not make sense for us to pursue that idea anymore. So all the work that was done, you know, the millions of dollars spent, the countless nights that we spent in getting it through the FDA, all went to waste. But we learned a lot in the process, and we used that for our other products and developing new ideas. So that's one key example I can that comes to mind.
Thank you. And was that when you were at Helen of Troy, Raj?
That's correct.
And you're still in a job, right? So that's
Yes.
you know, that's the important point. And so no, it's important to show, right? Because actually it's not just one moment, and having failures, as you said, can actually open doors to future successes. So thank you for sharing that with us, Raj. Michael, what have you got for me?
No, I'd say the same thing. You don't succeed until you fail. If you give up at the failure, then that's the issue. It's the not giving up. It's the taking that failure, going back and picking it apart. Why did it not work? Why did this innovation attempt not succeed the way we thought it was going to be? You learn from it. You would and use that to adjust how you innovate on the future projects. So you don't actually, you still, even though you failed on the specific project, you still won in that you learned how to do something different, better for the next time that increases the success of the next innovation you have.
Yeah. And the value is really in that follow-up piece, in that analysis,
Exactly.
like what went well, what didn't go so well, why didn't it go so well? And most importantly, what are we going to do differently the next time when we come to do this? Kinga, have you got something for me?
Yeah, in fact, I can share with you, in my company, we do have, you know, a formal process that we actually use and follow. This is called after action review. And this really empowers, you know, associates to collectively review the projects or the situations, incidents, right? And to evaluate what went well, but also what are the key learning points that can be used in the future. And the key findings from such analysis are being shared with other teams and other business units to make sure that we all learn together from those instances. And this is just for very simple questions. So first is like, what was expected? So you reflect on the past, then what actually happened, and then what is the difference between the two and why it is the difference between the two. I think it's a very nice tool, and then what we can learn from it moving forward. So it's really, I would say, a positive tool thinking, you know, for the future, to learn from the mistakes or from failures in the past, and to equip, you know, the team with a better tools to use it in the next projects.
Thank you. I really like the practical and tangible step by step. This is how we can go about reviewing it, because actually it puts something behind, and it gives you a process behind working through failures when they do happen, so that you actually get those learnings out so you can apply them to the next step. So guys, thank you. This time is absolutely whizzing by, and I had so many more questions that I wanted to put to you all on innovation. But unfortunately, we've come to that point where we have to go to the live Q&A. So because I can see the questions coming in. So we're going to start with the questions. But before we do that, I'm going to share my screen for all of our audience participants. So to all of our lovely audience all over the world, wherever you're dialing in from, we have the universal QR code right now on the screen. Take your phone, scan it with your camera. It's going to open a link to Slido. And there on Slido, you're going to be able to see a number of questions that have already been pre-registered by other people. So have a scan through them. If any of them catch your interest, give it a thumbs up so we can move that question to the top, because I'm going to be starting from the top, working my way down in terms of questions. I'm going to be asking these questions, and panelists, if one of these questions speaks to you, please raise your virtual or physical hand, whatever works, to be able to answer it for our audience. If nobody can answer it, I'm just going to pick someone at random and put them on the screen. So we're going to go into a quick fire session now of going through some of these questions. I think we've got around 20 questions living in the Q&A section. So guys, either ask your question. If you've got a question that hasn't been covered, pop it in the chat by clicking the ask button, or just upvote the ones that you really like the look of. And we're going to get started with the first question. So here we go. So this is by Anonymous. So question: how can innovation be smoothly integrated with the regulatory requirements and lack of availability of notified bodies, at least for the EU companies? And panelists, you should be able to see that. If you're sitting in the Zoom, you should see that popping up in chat just below. How can innovation be smoothly integrated with the regulatory requirements and lack of availability of notified bodies, at least for EU companies? So who can take that one? Michael.
I'll volunteer. So I think and this might even help you on the next one too. I can see the list. The regulatory requirements, the QMS requirements, it's a framework. It's not, this must be done exactly this way. This is where the innovation comes in from the QA and the RA professionals, is that you have a framework. It's a base set of requirements, but no one comes to work every day with the intention of doing their job in the most complicated way possible. You know, we all have mortgages to pay, even the people in the quality assurance department. If you're coming in and you're making everyone's job complicated, you're not contributing to the success of the company. You've got the base requirements. It's documenting how the company does this activity in the most efficient way and successful way for the company, and you've met the requirement. from a regulatory and from a QMS perspective. Now, the notified bodies, yeah, it's a waiting list at times. You have to get in line for the notified bodies. But while you're in line with them, you're doing that preparation, you're doing your internal audits, you're improving yourself by being aware of what you have, how you meet the requirements, and as you interact with other people outside of other companies, how they're doing it. But once again, integrating innovation into the requirements should be relatively easy. It's doing what works best for your company within the framework of the requirements, not saying these requirements are the black and white of everything. I'm an extremely gray person when it comes to interpreting the requirements. I always look for a black and white person to keep me under control, but it's more about what is going to help my company succeed as a QARA professional, and not about it must be done A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z. And that's how you integrate that innovation smoothly into the processes, both QA and RA side of things.
That said, though, I have heard stories of certain notified bodies, certain people within notified bodies that do implement a very black and white approach to the areas of grey. What would your advice be? Like, let's say let's say you've got an innovative way of doing things, but then actually you're confronted with actually it's black and white.
I think that's then knowing the requirements well enough and feeling confident enough to challenge and say, no, this is meeting the minimum. Yes, you may have this expectation. You may be operating off a checklist. My notified body also operates off a checklist. And when I don't check the box and I have to discuss it with them, I say, here's the reason why this is still suitable. It's being able to defend your position. If you think you're right and you've checked if you've talked about it with other colleagues and other in the industry, then stand your ground and have them prove you wrong, because you're the knowledge of your system and what works best for you. And defend yourself. Be proud of what you have. It works.
Thank you for that. Raj, yeah, you look like you've got something to add.
Yeah, a couple of points. Typically, in every notified body, there is an escalation process or an ombudsman that you can always access. Sometimes you come across auditors that are really unreasonable. We have come across some of them, and sometimes you have to follow that process. But one thing I would also like to say is that you can also define the scope of your quality management system, and you can have the innovative processes, you can make them a little bit more flexible, where they do not have to follow as rigid requirements as the ones that are more better defined. So you could have, for example, an R&D that works a little bit outside the scope of the QMS, and when they have a mature technology, for example, then bring it within your QMS or something like that. That has worked quite well for us.
I would just want to add one more thing. It's not necessarily have to be outside the QMS. It takes a certain skill to build that flexibility and to build those loopholes into your SOP straight away, so that you're compliant from the day one, even if they're doing things very flexibly in R&D. I know the challenge you're talking about, Raj. We have it too.
Yeah.
And one thing that I just will add on availability of notified bodies, because I literally just got back from RAPS Euroconvergence last week. A lot of notified bodies were there, and the general conversation around availability of notified bodies is that they have capacity, they are available, and actually, like right now, we're in a different moment to what we've seen, for example, last year, where there was this bottleneck. A lot of the notified bodies are claiming that they're not having the same bottleneck, that they are prepared, they are available, and they do have the resources. So I would encourage you to continue speaking to your notified body and see what you can do, because right now they are all saying that they have capacity and availability. So do with that what you will. But let's move on to the next question. So the next question we have, also from Anonymous. Often, startups without proper QMS have more innovative ideas. How can you create a QMS which does not block innovation whilst you are still ensuring quality? I feel like we may have slightly answered that anyway in the last one, but I want to, Kinga, because you have obviously a background in quality, I just want to throw it to you to see if you have anything to add to that question.
So I would agree with everything what you already said, that it's a framework. The QMS is a framework, and it depends on you and your complexity of your organization to build it so that it suits your size and the activities, right? so that it's not creating the roadblocks. And I can only tell you from my experiences that sometimes organizations are building unnecessary and very complex labor-heavy QMS, and they are going like with the cycles. Then it's really hard to maintain. We realize that, and we are going through a simplification projects, right? So going through this few times already. But what I can also say is that we can see that our regulators, even slower than the business, they are also adjusting, their requirements. And for example, the computer system validation now versus what was in the past has been dramatically changed, from what you have to actually validate every single element of the computer system. Then you are now able to approach it with less burdensome, risk-based approach in validation of the computer system. So that is changing. We hope to see more. Like also the MDSAP auditing, right, is consolidating all the efforts from different regulators in the globe. So we will see this will come more and more, but maybe at a little bit slower pace than the business.
Thank you, Kinga. Okay, so let's keep going because we do have more and more questions. So guys, don't forget to upvote the questions that you like the look of, because we are going to try and answer as many of them as we can. And it's not too late to ask one. So if you want more clarification on something that one of our panelists has said, ask the question. So let's move on. So Anonymous has also said, I typically go through an existing process at least once before advocating innovation. What are some tips you'd recommend for innovating as you go? Who would like to take that? Michael, okay.
I'm talking too much. I'm happy to let someone else if someone wants to. The existing process, if you're going through the existing process, are you innovating? Are you even in the mindset to innovate? If you're going to take the existing process and just start with it from scratch, would be my first question. However, the question is, what tips would you have for innovating as you go? Yes, you can still do that in little small steps. You can enhance, even a process that works can be enhanced and improved. To use the existing process and innovate as you go, I would say don't rely on the knowledge you have in your head. Go back to the basics. Go back to what the base requirements are. Go back to the tools that exist that helped you develop that process to start with. Read through them again. Refresh your knowledge of them, and look to see if the interpretations or the applications, like Kinga said, CSV has changed. If the way it's being interpreted has changed with the time, and see if you can find some changes in the interpretation to make little steps to the existing process as you go along. But on some level, to really innovate properly, you've got to jump in the cold water. You've got to just take that step off the edge. But you can do it step by step. I say go back to the basics, re-educate yourself as if you've never seen it before, and see if there are things that come to your mind when you read it the second time.
Thank you, Michael. Has anyone got anything to add?
Yeah, I can add to that. One thing that has worked well for us here is before you socialize your new ideas, it might be good to test it out with a smaller group, especially a group that is more aligned with your thinking, and kind of get all the low-hanging fruit out and prove your idea and prepare before you actually go and talk about it to other groups or to your executive team. And that preparation is kind of key, because the more you do it, the more risk you retire, the better you will be in a position to sell that and for that idea to be adopted. If you have an idea that is already proven and validated and has a proof of concept, it becomes very difficult to kind of ignore it.
Thank you very much, Raj. So moving on to the next question then. So we do have a question which we've kind of already covered, but just in case the person or some of the people in the audience joined us a little bit late and kind of missed that initial part where we spoke about how to actually go about fostering that, I'd like to put that to you, Hannah. And the question is, what's the best practice on how to develop an innovative mindset within my company?
Thanks, Elena. Well, I mean, I guess we've talked a little bit about this, right? It's important to understand the culture of the organization that you're working in. It's important to consider the size, the scale, all of those types of things. But what I would say is, I mean, be intentional about the culture you want to create in your team. Right, this you have direct control over as a leader, and this is something that's accessible to everyone. And you know, what we typically see in the teams that do this well is you've got really this safe space that happens in the team, because we've talked about, you know, learning the hard way sometimes, making mistakes, making sure that you've got the culture in your team that means that people can come, they can throw about crazy ideas. You can have Michael going completely off the page in the gray space. You can have Kinga bringing him back down to earth with some more black and white stuff. Build a culture in your team where that's possible, and also bring a safe space for some vulnerability into the team, right? Because it takes a lot for people to articulate that they've failed, or that an idea actually wasn't the best one, even after you've been completely convinced and gone ahead and try and told people that you thought it was. So I would say that make sure the trust is there. That's not just about consensus. It's not just about high fives. It's about challenging each other. It's about ripping ideas apart. And it's about giving people the feedback they need, right? And sometimes as a leader, that comes from helping them understand, stop chasing this idea. This is not the right one. Lean more into this space. This is where we're going to get more traction and success. So there's lots of things which are super tangible and super accessible as a leader that you can bring into your team directly.
So I think that's you touched on something really important, which is actually one of the following most popular questions, which is about, you know, what does the leader need to do to create a safe space? And I'd like to just expand on that a little bit more. And I'm interested to, if any of you have any specific tools that you can use to actually set up that safe space. So I know we've spoken about creating that safe space and allowing for failures, but I'm interested to know, like, what does that actually look like? You know, is it something that you say at the beginning of these brainstorming sessions? Is it that you have a separate, like, literal physical space where this stuff gets stored and discussed and, you know, interacted upon? What specific tools do you actually have that you implement within your team to facilitate that safe space creation? I'm going to put that out to anyone who can answer it.
Yeah, I can comment on that. One of the key things that I do here is basically lead by example. That's number one, because then that can set the tone. We also do messaging so that people know that that's what we really encourage and what we support. We also ensure that there is cross-functional interaction and there is diversity in the thinking so that we can look at different perspectives. And then we have a reward system as well as a measurement system. We have this thing called CEO Awards, where we actually reward people with innovative ideas that have become great product successes, where the CEO actually invites all the exceptional people and gives them these awards. So these 4 or 5 things are kind of critical, in terms of developing the right culture.
Thanks, Raj. Has anyone else got anything? Hannah?
Yeah, I can add to that. And I think it's important to make sure that you listen to the team and understand what they need from you. And I can share an example of something I implemented in the past. And to Kinga's point earlier in the session about being open to external perspective, I took a team I was leading to go and visit the Google campus here in Switzerland. You know, everybody loves to learn from the tech industry. These guys are kind of so emblematic of what it means to innovate. And they talked us through a bunch of management tools that they have to make sure that it's embedded into their ways of working. And the one thing that my team came back crazy about wanting to implement in team meetings was something they'd shared with us, which was in some groups, they start all of their team meetings with reflections on what the highlights of the week or the month have been, but also the lowlights, right? And they document that and they keep that, which allows you to reflect on the successes of the year. But when it comes to normalizing some of the discussion about lowlights, which is not even something as strong as failure. It allows, you know, a safe space for people to talk about that. It normalizes it because it embeds it into the culture of the team. You create a space for people to share and say, okay, I've had that in the past, like this is how I dealt with it. And then it also allows you to do some continuous improvement, because especially in a business partnering role or a matrix-based role, it allows you to see what some of the trends of the challenges are across the organization. And I couldn't believe it, because I thought I was super connected with the team. We talk about this stuff all the time. And it was unanimous. All of them came back and said, can we do that? Like, I want to do it from next week. So I think there's one reminder: stay open to, you know, listening to your team, because they know what they want sometimes. And you, even if you think you're super close, then there's always possibilities to learn. And there's just loads of simple ideas out there that can just help create a framework and, you know, normalize some of the discussions that you need to have in the teams.
Yeah, I really like that, the wins and also the lowlights, actually taking the time to reflect on both. Really interesting. Kinga, have you got something to add?
Yeah, I can reflect on one project that we had. It's continuing, but it started last year, where, you know, I gave my team a safe space and time, limited time, but still. And I know, and I realize that you don't have this luxury every time, but we had this opportunity to look at the problem, release 360, give ourselves a time to explore so many different options, and really report out, you know, what is the best option at the very end. And only this year we are going after, you know, a tangible project, and what does it already mean, and there are metrics, there are expectations, timelines, and whatnot. But this pre-design phase kind of research was a great opportunity to flourish all crazy and unbelievable ideas. So I think that was very good example of how you can create a safe space for people to come up with good things. You all mentioned the diversity, but I think one thing that I would like to stress is it's diversity, but it's also inclusion, right? Because inclusion is actually the choice, right? So we can have a diverse team, but until we include those different perspectives, we may not see that benefit. So make sure that when you are creating that space for your teams, that you not only create the people that are, you know, having great ideas, but also pair them with the ones that can drive implementation, because idea without implementation is just a bright idea, right? So, but also make sure that, you know, people in that team feel included and they bring their own perspectives.
Really interesting, and thank you for making the point about inclusion and diversity of ideas is also super important, like having those dissenting voices around the table, and if you're the one bringing ideas, having the people that will tell you that your idea is not a good idea, to Hannah's point, you know, actually being open to receiving that, and you know, facilitate, like forcing that conversation to happen, is also really important, from what I've seen. So let's keep going, guys. So I'm going to just share my screen one more time for those of you that don't have the Slido open. So make sure you've scanned this QR code, open the link. There's still loads of questions in there, guys. We're not going to get through all the questions, so I'm going to move as quickly as we can now to get through as many as possible. But if you don't have a question to ask, upvote the ones that you want us to cover, and I'm going to try my best to make sure that we are answering as many of the most popular questions as possible. Now, the next question is around getting management essentially buy-in towards innovation, and I feel like we have discussed this at length. So this is also going to be available offline for you to watch this on demand, so you can rewind and listen to that section. But I'm gonna move across to the next question, which is: how can startups with innovative ideas reach large organizations to sell their product or establish agreements with them? Does anyone have anything to add to any question, any answer for that one? How can startups with innovative ideas reach large? So I think this is asking a little bit more about innovative ways for startups with innovations to reach bigger organizations. Does anyone have any tips?
I would say the industry trade groups, those the relative trade shows for the product or the type of product that you're involved in are the great places to go and network. Certainly, if you have business development managers or you find the large companies that you're targeting and you can find that they have a business or strategy development team, those would be the first places to contact in. But it's more about knowing your product and knowing who the people you want to contact, and then basically you have to cold call.
Yeah. And yeah, I was going to go on, Raj, if you've got anything to add to that.
Yeah, so I was just going to add to that. Most big companies have got new product innovation groups that basically are looking for new ideas, because in most big companies, they recognize that some of these ideas could come from startups. So it might be a good idea to kind of identify who are these people in the new product innovation group and maybe develop a relationship, with them, so that you're able to put that idea in front whenever the opportunity arises.
Thank you for that one, Raj. And I'm sure, this is the business development strategy is a really, really big topic that we could probably do a whole other session on, but I want to keep this focused on leadership and driving innovation. So I'm going to keep going with the questions that we have here. And I think this is a really interesting question. So the question is, what has worked for panelists? How best to promote innovative thinking within teams on projects whilst balancing delivering long and short-term objectives? So that's really about balancing like what's going on in the company, because obviously, innovation is sometimes considered perhaps a nice to have, and you've got short-term objectives, long-term objectives, and this nice wish to be innovative. So how do you balance that? Does anyone have any input to that question?
I can say something here. So I do believe, the innovation is a long-term goal. So you have to invest here and now to be able to harness it later. And when I think about how to find the time, you really need to do it in parallel. And my background, working in post-market quality, where, my kind of life is to make sure that our processes are as much efficient as possible, as adding value. So we are looking into how we can do things better. And you do it through observing the current process, right? So what is the problem within your processes, which you have to attack? And I think you can do it in the same time. I know maybe that may differ if you are sitting in the product development space, but certainly for me, you need to do it in parallel, because otherwise you may miss the train and not get funding to get your innovation in the pipeline.
Thank you, Kinga. Michael, you've got something to add.
One more thing is the innovation should be contributing to obtaining the short and long-term objectives. Yeah. If it's not helping the company obtain those, is it innovative for your company?
Yeah, and that's to Hannah's point of like start with the end goal in mind, right?
Right.
Really, really interesting. Raj?
Yeah, one thing I want to add to that is in our organization, for example, we have a very well-defined process. We call it OGSM, which stands for Objective Goals, Strategies, and Measures. And each person in the organization has an OGSM. One thing to balance the two is to figure out how many of your goals need to be innovation oriented. So if you have like 5 goals, you can make 2 of them that are innovation oriented, and the remaining 3, which is business as usual, or the normal activities that you do that are more well defined, or you could have 3 that are innovation and 2 that are normal, depending on how risk averse you are. So that's one way of doing it that has worked quite well for us.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to go to the next question, which was an interesting one. Where did it go now? Okay, so there's a lot of questions on getting buy-in still from management. And this one is very specific, right? So it says, how to get your CEO to adopt your ideas by structuring your presentation from a numbers perspective. But I do want to lean a little bit more into this question, because let's say you have a brilliant idea, it's a brilliant innovation, and you're trying to sell it to your CEO. And we touched on getting buy-in, more broadly speaking. But when you're trying to pitch this to a CEO, leader of the business, like business leaders, they look for different things in your presentations. It's not just about compliance and innovation and buzzwords. They actually often are looking for, okay, well, what's the ROI of this going to be? So they're looking deeper into the expected outcomes and metrics. So what advice do you have for how to structure like that pitch to the leadership? I'm going to start with you, Hannah, because I think you might have some interesting perspective on this.
Well, I think it's always really important to know your audience. And depending on where you are in the organization, that could be the first time you're meeting someone from the executive leadership team, or it could be the 25th, the 100th time, whatever. But it's important to take the time to reflect on knowing your audience. I think it's important to have some self-awareness around how comfortable you are with that type of thing and seek out the people who can help you, right? So back to the things I was talking about earlier, bringing people together. If you work in a big commercial organization, there will be marketing and commercial specialists you work alongside who do this all day, every day for a living, right? And if you need to reach out to someone, get some feedback, do it. Prepare, be more prepared than you could ever be. That is probably not a space where you want to learn the hard way and by mistake, right? That is privileged time when you sit down with the executive leadership team members. So be overly prepared. Don't anticipate there, and don't be afraid to practice. I think sometimes people, especially when we're working in fast-paced industries, we go into these things, we have meetings all the time. Be really intentional about the messages you want to give and have that person take away. And don't hesitate to do, depending on the confidentiality levels, do it with your partner at home, do it with your friends. Do they understand what you're talking about? Can they take away, the 3 most important things you want to have? So, the capacity to build a narrative, storytell, adapt to the audience is important, right? And if you don't have that, if that's not part of your natural skill set, seek out some people who it is, because I'm sure in the organizations, the audience working, there's people out there who are just experts in that.
And I'm interested to build on that a little bit further. So to the other panelists, what specifically so we've got future leaders listening in right now. So they're probably managers, senior managers, team leaders, associate directors, this point in their career, right? What do they need to know about selling a concept to an executive leadership team? So what is this executive leadership team? What are they actually looking for? What's important to them? And what do our audience need to know if they want to try and sell an idea to them? Michael, I'm going to maybe put this to you first.
We're looking for the overall benefit to the company and the company's objectives. We're not looking for the benefit to an individual function. We're looking at how this idea, how this innovation helps the company as a whole succeed. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to answer the so what. Mm-hmm. If you can't answer the so what, then it doesn't benefit the entire organization, because you've got the entire executive team there. They're all going to look at it from their aspect, and they've all got to see that it contributes to the overall company's goal. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's where you've got to convince, yeah, to the
company's objectives. Raj, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I think the key thing I would say is that really study the executive well. Try to figure out what background they have. Are they a math person? Are they a quality person? Did they come from a selling background? And then try to tailor your message to that particular kind of background. And also try to have your data and your numbers ready. And one way to really persuade is to show what can happen if your idea is not implemented, right? Where you lose market share, or you are not able to increase your revenue or whatever. So if you have that data, use that aspect and try to speak in a language that the executive executive understands. To give you an example, we have a president here who is a math major. And when we talk to him in terms of algorithms and nonlinear techniques and things like that, and he instantly gets it, right? So depending on what kind of background they have, it's important to align yourself in that direction.
Yeah, I think you make a really important point. And Hannah, I don't know if you can speak to this or what your thoughts are on this, because it's going to be like overly generalist and generalized personality types. However, there is a school of thought of like 4 basic colors. People tend to fall into there's various different versions of that, but typically there are certain functions that tend to fall more into one than another. And so if somebody doesn't, your point was, okay, know your audience, but actually if this person, if you're speaking to somebody that you've never met before, you actually don't know anything about them, but you're trying to get some insight on, okay, what are they likely to be like? You can ask people, that may know them, but can you give any advice on like functions and typical traits of leaders within those functions?
Oof, Elena, it's
a horrible question. I'm sorry.
It's so hard to answer. I mean, I guess maybe the watch out is never assume.
Yeah, true.
Right. You can have completely, overturned expectations about discussions. I work in a function which is hugely subjective, right?
Yeah.
People, sometimes they tell me, I love people, I want to work in HR. I tell them, if you love people, be a people leader, right? Like that's probably the best place to be if you want to have that impact across the organization. But again, think about the company you work in. Think about the scale, the size, what's important. Look at how your company communicates. There's stuff out there you can do. Be research-based, be fact-based. Listen to something like an all-employee meeting. Listen to the words that your leadership team use. Look at how you communicate your employer branding on LinkedIn. I mean, wherever you are in the organization, there's things that are out there that allow you to do the research. What I can tell you is, again, time with these people is precious. They will be super focused and listening to you if you've got that opportunity, but they're likely to have, a short period of time to be listening to you. So back to Michael's point, what's in it for us, right? If people come away from a presentation, that was great, it was super slick, but I'm not giving you a 6-7 figure investment to unlock this idea. So I would say it's difficult across the functions, but there's probably some similarities across how leadership teams work at that level, at the C-suite level, which is quite consistent across companies. But again, just reach out. If you're there for a reason, right? Be confident that they want to hear from you, that someone said this is a good idea, it's a good opportunity. Be confident in that. But again, keep your ego in check. Make sure you get the advice and counsel from some people around you that you trust.
Thank you so much. So we've really dug into how to get buy-in from management across this whole conversation. So there's loads and loads of stuff for our audience to take away and listen to. And I really hope that that's, really going to help people be able to move forwards and sell innovation to their upper management if they need to. I'm conscious of time, guys. We're literally running into the last 5 minutes of the session, but I do have one question, and I'd love it just like a one-word answer from each of you, which is around looking forwards. So the question is, looking forwards, what is the single most exciting change or innovation you anticipate is going to affect this industry? So just give me a one-word answer and we'll do a quick round robin. I'll start with Michael.
Artificial intelligence, 2 words.
Okay, 2 words, I'll take that. Yeah, a phrase is fine. Kinga?
You stole mine. I'll go machine learning.
Interesting, machine learning. Raj?
I would concur with Michael. I was going to say that too, but I would also say predictive analytics.
Interesting. And Hannah, from your side?
Oh, you're going to think I'm cliched again, but I'd talk about the next generation of talent and leadership who are all going to have grown up with these tools that we're talking about, right? That we haven't been confronted with as part of our education and experience in the same way they will be. So I'm looking forward to the disruption, positive disruption that will bring to the talent market.
So watch this space. Artificial intelligence technology is definitely going to be one, and it's an idea perhaps for the next future leader session or one down the line. So I'm gonna just jump into our presentation. And now, guys, if you're in your Slido, we're going to launch a poll, because I would love to know what you have taken away from this session today. We've just had 90 minutes almost of conversation, discussion, debate, all around driving innovation from some amazing leaders who are doing it really, really well. I would like to know what has been your biggest learning. That is going to be launching in the poll on your Slido any minute now. So please take a second to drop in your biggest learning. And I'm interested to read out and share with our panel some of the things that the audience has been able to take away. So what did you learn? Let's see. Okay, so we're already getting some of the answers in. So we've got, don't be afraid to try. So that's important. We've spoken about that, being fearless and being bold when it comes to innovation. Being brave is also something that's come through. What else have we got coming through? I've also refreshed my Slido so the whole thing's fresh. Support each other. Okay, really good. So actually, it's about, you know, fostering that environment of innovation with the team, and a lot of that does come from the leader and does come from creating that safe space. Collaborate. Soft skills matter. You know, so actually, a lot of it is around that culture piece. That's really important when it comes to creating a team that's innovative and driving innovation within the team. So thank you everybody for sharing your learnings. Next poll, will you be attending the next session? Yes or no? Right on Slido. I would like to know if you're going to be attending the next session that we're going to be launching, and I'm about to share with you what that's going to be about. So far I can just see yeses on the screen, which is a positive outcome. So really excited to share with you, because we're going to be doing these a lot more regularly. They've been super popular for the people that listen live. And don't forget, this is going to be made as a recording that you can go back to and listen to as well, and rewind and replay Hannah's input as many times as you want, and Michael's input as many times as you want, so you can really study and listen to what our leaders have said. But before we do that, I just want to quickly recap, tiny little picture about Elemed. We do total talent management. So you might know us as doing recruitment or doing data or the MDR group, but actually we cover the whole spectrum of talent. That's hiring, that's compliance projects, and that's skills, data, and insights. And talking about skills, data, and insights, I'm really big on making sure that we're adding value to the community consistently. So we've got the MDR group, we've got the Mentoring Academy, we've got the Executive Podcast, and we've got the Future Leader Series that you're listening to today. And in addition, there's two special announcements that I want to make that you might not know about. The first one is that we have just launched the new version of the Global Regulatory Affairs Workforce Report with RAPS. So this is a partnership that we recently launched that is going to give you a global picture of the workforce in regulatory affairs by country, by specialism, give you some insights on top employers, give you some insights on backgrounds of where these people are coming from. So if you scan that QR code, you can download it right now. And the other special announcement, which I'm just literally announcing right now, is that we are launching a first in kind regulatory software survey. So if you want to implement digital into your regulatory processes, into your company, but you don't know what to implement and you want to know what other people are using, we are currently running a survey to our network to understand what is everybody using, do they rate it, what are they using it for, what are the best uses for the technology that they have implemented as far as regulatory goes. We're going to collate that and put it out in an industry report for the whole network, and we're going to do it across clinical and across quality as well. So please scan that QR code. If you fill it out, you will get first access to the report, and we will be sharing that in the coming weeks. So I hope that that is really useful, guys. Finally, the next session is coming in June on vision and values. Keep an eye on the Elemed company page to map out that date in your diary. More on this coming soon. But that's it, guys. We are at the end of the session. I want to say a huge thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much for joining and sharing all your insights. Thank you, everybody else, for listening live, and have a great evening. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.